Now, the Bram Weinstein Show on Washington's new home for sports, ESPN 630.
Hey, babies. Hey, babies. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone.
Big day.
Hi, everyone.
Big day today.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Big day in Ted World.
Monumental day.
It's a monumental
Hey-o.
day. So congratulations, Ted. I often say this, and I think it needs to be reiterated. I talk about him a lot because I love him, actually. I like the guy. I respect him.
Sure.
I think he's a good owner.
Yeah.
And but boy, he's ruling the world now.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, and what we're talking about is the NBC Sports Washington. Ted had owned 33% of it. They bought the remaining outstanding shares of it and now own it in its entirety. So NBC proper is no longer in the business of having a regional network here.
Yeah.
I believe NBC proper and their staff is going to work for the transition for like at least another year or so. Mm-hmm. Probably that makes a lot of sense. You don't want to just go, here you go.
Clear house,
Right. Do you know how to do caps games?
Right.
Like, so, like,
Right.
so wisely, their staff is going to stick around and let them transition into whatever it's going to be.
Yeah.
And Joe B and Craig Laughlin are probably like, God, they didn't,
Right.
because, they work with professional people who do broadcasts of hockey games. And the last thing you want to do is get a bunch of interns that don't know what they're doing producing this stuff. So, so they're going to stick around. But for all intents and purposes, our regional sports network is owned by an owner entirely.
Yep.
Now, I would argue it already was, okay?
Me
and
too.
we could talk about that in a moment.
Yeah.
But for real, it does now. So, how do I feel about this? Ooh. Now that it's like official.
Yeah.
Because, there was some level of independent journalism, at least in the Commanders coverage, that still remained because that wasn't the owner, and I'm sure he didn't care if JP or whoever else was saying whatever they really felt, about.
Sure.
But for a while there, and I think it's been pretty clear if you follow it closely, you can't go too hard at the Wizards or the Capitals if you were working over there. And that's partially because the owner of the teams owns a third of it. Now he owns all of it. And now, I guess the difference is at least NBC proper was, perceptually producing everything. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure there was pushback to, certain talking points along the way. But now it will be eventually completely produced in-house. So, how do you feel about that?
I'm very indifferent. I don't really care. I think
I'm waiting to see what the broadcasts look like. And it won't be this season. It'll be next season. But, does it look different? Does it feel different? Is it tailored different? Is it more home teamy, if that's a way to put it? Because I think there will be an inclination, because they're in complete control of it and they're not talking to, hey, we're NBC, we know what we're doing here.
Right.
Let us produce this on your behalf. Once it's completely in-house and they can kind of tweak it any way they want, I'm not sure what the presentation is going to be, I guess is the way I would put it. And I don't know what I don't know, and I'm not accusing them of anything, but I could see them leaning towards, oh, we're fully producing the Wizards broadcast? Well, we're going to start doing this, and this.
Sure.
And that could be good, and it could be weird. So I don't know.
That's what's funny, though, is what you just mentioned is that's the only wiggle room they have. Let's look at NBC Sports Washington's lineup. They simulcast the Junkies in the morning, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's not original content. They take that.
That's right.
They have
almost no original content left outside of the games.
It's Command. That's right. It's Command Central, Command Central.
Sorry. Yes, but that is produced by Julie and her team.
Right, correct. So
that's the whole thing, soup to nuts, is completely produced. It was before with Larry too, but she produces and her team produce that whole thing and just send it to them.
Correct. Okay, so there's that. And then the only thing that happens, original on that station, is the pre- and post-game for Caps and Wizards.
And the games itself.
And
the games itself.
Yeah, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But
which is the big endeavor.
Right.
Yes.
But what I'm saying here is with that in terms of wiggle room and what they can, I don't even want to use the word control, but what you think they could control is the pre- and post-game, which you and I know this, the home team broadcasts aren't going to go that hard at the team anyways, or make these extreme hot takes to make people go, whoa, look what they're saying on pre- and post-game. No, it's very much I would get ready and recap type situation.
I mean, I think the Capitals one is interesting because they've been so good for so long that it is really hard, I think, to go hard at them because they've been wildly successful for a long time. I think the last couple of years they probably could have gone a little harder. Like
but Alan May says what he wants.
Yeah, it's true.
He doesn't really pull punches.
Alan May doesn't hold back.
Yeah,
and I feel like when I watch the game broadcast, I feel like Locker has latitude.
I agree.
I don't feel like he doesn't. I do.
I would say on the flip side, Chris Miller has never been afraid to criticize what's happening that night or what they need to improve on. When they were really bad last year, like after they won 10 games and then cratered, there were a couple of nights where he
went after him.
And it wasn't venomous. It was like, hey, X, Y, and Z needs to change or this is going to go really off the tracks. And it was done in a way that was respectful. I think that's what I'm getting at here. So the wiggle room to me is kind of already been established. I don't really see what's going to change that much.
We'll see. I mean, it's not that I'll be honest. I have not watched a lot of pre-post game Wizards over the last couple of years because it's, it just, their seasons seem to crater in a way, and I don't have my expectations are tempered with as much as I don't want them to be.
Usually turn it off before the fourth quarter's over with, anyways. Let's be real.
Yeah, I mean my expectations have just been tempered. Yeah. And anyone who listens to this show knows I wish it wasn't that way. I'm dying to have a really good NBA team around here, and I'm dying for them to do things and change the roster to make it a really good NBA team around here. But that being said, I don't watch a ton of it, which is why I don't want to be overly critical. But the times that I have, I don't feel like they go at that team at all.
Right.
On pre or post.
No,
they don't. They really don't.
They say what is wrong on the court, and that's about it.
That's about it.
I would think in any other pre or post game show, that's what you do.
In a non-independent, situation, which is what they are and what they've been, it is hard to do that. Right. And I'm not, listen, I work for a team. I know what my lane is on game day.
Yeah.
I know what my lane is on game day. I'm in a very awkward position because this station isn't owned by that team.
Right.
This is an independent, group. I can and am willing to say whatever I want, but I'll do it within reason because I know who my other employer is. And on game day, and I've talked about this a lot, I know what my job is. My job is not to stir the pot. My job is to call the plays and call a game and tell a story of that day. If I see someone do something utterly ridiculous at the game, I will talk about it. If John Allen and Deron Payne get into a fight on the sideline, I will talk about it. But I'm not looking to stir it up like I will here, and I know what it is. And they're in a tricky position in a game broadcast or a pregame show where the owner is probably watching and wondering what you're talking about. Right. But I would say in the case of the Wizards, who probably deserve a little more knives out, they kind of don't get it over there. But I understand why.
Yep. No.
I do.
No,
I don't think a lot's going to change here outside of, I guess my point is, I don't think a lot's going to change here outside of presentation. And I do wonder how they view presentation of the games because it's all yours, boys. So what's it going to be?
Right.
And I don't know how they're going to view that. Are they going to incorporate more gambling? Are they going to incorporate more gaming? Mm-hmm. Because they're in all of that. Yep. Are they going to use this as a function to promote their other teams a little bit more? Will they use it as a platform to say, here's more about the Mystics. Let me teach you more about the Mystics. Here's more about district gaming. Would you like to learn a little bit more about that? Here's what Liquid, isn't that the name of their team?
Yeah.
Yeah. You learn more about that. Their 2K teams, I could see it them using that as a vehicle, so you'll see more of that. Will there be more gambling because they have a sports book? I don't know.
Right.
I don't know what's going to happen with that. And then, do they modernize the broadcast in a way? I guess we'll find out. Not this year, but next year we'll find out.
So that one goes twofold. Remember they tested out the gambling version of the Wizards broadcast. So that's always an option that I've always thought is on the back burner with them. And
they're ahead of this stuff, and in-game betting is here, and I could see where they go, let's go.
And they might honestly be waiting for Maryland to come through, and then all of a sudden you could really roll that out and probably, turn a profit or at least break even on it at a bare minimum. Right away. Mm-hmm. The other one is what you mentioned there too, is more heavy gambling. They do shows from their sports book, but they're in a podcast format, I believe. I'm pretty sure that's the case. I don't think they're on terrestrial radio anywhere. That's another option there that all of a sudden that's something you get to throw a camera out there and then their live gambling show is happening on the air there. My whole thing is I'm going to guess Monumental is finally going to take advantage of this and put more of their actual content on the airwaves. And I don't know what that's going to be or what time of the day it's going to be, but I would have to think they're going to take advantage of that, including the Mystics, because the Mystics, if you tried to watch them this year, was a joke. If they were at home, fine. You got their normal announcers from the Monumental Sports Arena. But if they were away, it was a mess. You got the other team's broadcast, And a lot of times you actually didn't get their audio either because of some weird WNBA rule from you can't like transmit two things or something along those lines. It was a mess. So I'm hoping here too, like they finally just stick the Mystics on there because it's not going to coincide with anything most of the time that happens. So, I mean, my guess is they should take advantage of all the open real estate they're going to have.
So there are some other things here by owning this outright and having it that I think could be beneficial if it's done with the fan in mind and not in the messaging, this is how we're going to say things in mind, which is where I think teams get in trouble when they think about this stuff. Like, they're so hyper protective and think that their fans have to cover their ears if they hear certain things, and therefore, and all teams do this, it's not just them, all teams do this, they try to sanitize down messaging as if their fans aren't grown-ups and don't know the truth of it.
Well, it's also, you can click on Twitter and you see what's really happening right in real time.
Yes, and there's always been this kind of like, it's funny, all these teams want to have control of their media because it's valuable. They want to have control of their fans, they want to get more of their attention. Why siphon off, the fan base to independent media? And the reason why the independent media continues to work, which is my argument always back to them when they talk about these things, is because we're not stupid and we're emotionally invested, and therefore we are knowledgeable about your teams. So just give it to us straight, right? Just give it to us straight. If you actually did it that way, I think you'd be better served with outcomes that you're looking for, but most teams are afraid to do that. Don't ask this guy this particular question. Don't ask the coach that particular question. And yet, the independent media is going to do it, and the independent media is going to continue to get all the clicks and the downloads and all those things. So, considering that now that they have literally are going to take all of their content in-house that's going to be disseminated on the biggest platform in the area and nationally for fans of the Caps or the Wizards or the Mystics who are outside of the area. Now that they are fully, literally in control of all of it, my only piece of advice to them would be not to be afraid to be openly and objectively critical when it's proper and necessary because your fans will appreciate it. Like, if you continue to go down the road of everything is rosy and everything is fine and having a basketball team that wins 30 games a year, and that's cool.
Brad. Everybody loves Brad.
If you continue to go down this road, now that there is no real independent part of this, I think you're just going to continue to turn people off, because I just would want to say to them, as someone who's lived here my whole life, we're not stupid. We do wear big boy pants. We can take it. And we actually want to engage with you if you're willing to have real conversations with us. So just, if your meetings are starting with, we can't say this or we can't say that, you're off to the wrong foot. So I hope, and I know that some of that was already happening because he'd already owned 33% of NBC Sports Washington. And to the original point of, I haven't watched the Wizards pre and post game much, because I don't expect them to really come at them. And I don't remember anything going viral where they did. You know? Like, they cratered in a way last year that was really unusual.
Chris Miller had a few clips. That's what I'm getting at.
Chris Miller had a few. But everybody else on that set, it was lock up.
Mats, too. I'll give Massenberg credit, too.
A little bit. Massenberg will do it a little bit, too. So, anyway, that's my only piece of advice. If you are starting meetings with, here's the things we can't talk about, or here's the vein we can't go down, well, then you're not paying attention to your fans and what they're talking about. Don't be afraid to be honest. And, like, as long as you have pros who don't make it, I've always felt the line is don't make it personal. As long as it's not personal, I think you're okay. But if you're honest, if Brad has a bad week and is scoring 10 points a game and isn't getting to the line and you're losing by 20 every week, if you can't have an honest conversation about that, I really don't want to pay attention to you.
Here's what I would say, too. If you're not going to do it, people are just going to go elsewhere. I mean, we're in a
that's the point.
We're in a actual, and I'll call it a literal space where, like, the Nationals, I open up Twitter and there's 2 or 3 spaces going of people talking amongst themselves about the game that just happened, right?
Yes.
If that's happening,
but that's the real talk that's happening.
Correct. That's what I'm getting at. Don't shy away from it, because guess what? They can literally now open up, and we in that sense, you can literally open up the app now and everybody's talking.
I will let me pull up the curtain on one thing I did last week, which falls in line with what we're talking about. I get to talk to Ron Rivera alone before every game for a few minutes, and I get to ask him a few questions, and I don't have a lot because he does so much media availability that he's answered most of my questions. But there's always a few topics that I would like to talk about, one for game preparation and two for particular storylines.
Yeah.
And in this past weekend, there was no chance on earth that the three of us were not going to address Antonio Gibson.
Right.
No chance.
Yeah, of course.
Because for the purpose of being real, that was a huge thing.
Right.
We didn't know what happened. He was benched. Suddenly he was doing different things in practice. And he came out and took the opening kickoff and didn't start at running back. And we would be idiots not to address it at some point.
Sure.
So when I talked to Rivera alone, I'd heard him address this all week. I said to him, I won't tell you exactly what I asked, but I did say, for the purpose of the broadcast, we are going to address this, and I'd like to hear directly from you about these specific things so that I can talk about this in an educated way, and I'm not guessing. And he appreciated it and answered those questions, and those are the messages that I put out on the broadcast. But my point is this. It's not that, we don't touch on everything. Like, our broadcast... Because all the people over there are going, let me hear you talk about Congress during the game broadcast. And I'm like, of course I'm not going to talk about that, right? Right? But like, my point is, don't go down this path where anything negative is off limits. And I know that once you have total control of it, there is this kind of like power vacuum that can occur where the people you're afraid to hurt the feelings of the people in charge because you think you're not allowed to talk about that. And the real fans want you to.
Well, and the people, let's be real too. The people that are working there are afraid to address some of it too because they don't want to get fired.
And I understand that.
Their well-being,
in the same way that I don't want to get fired. I love my job and I like to be careful about what I say about the team. But I want to do it in an educated manner, and I do think that our fans are educated enough to know when I'm BSing them, and so why would I?
Right.
And I'm not going to shy away from the biggest story on the field of the week was Antonio Gibson got benched.
Yeah.
Like, how could I avoid talking about that? Like, you can spin it any way you want. That is what happened. We need to talk about it. So please, Zach and company, just think about that, okay? Think about that. The other part is, I do think it is potentially exciting how you rethink the broadcasts.
Sure.
These guys are forward thinking. Like, they got into gaming before a lot of the other ownership got into gaming. They bought those arena teams for a specific purpose to gamify it. It didn't work out that way, and they didn't own it long enough. But that's why they bought it. Like, they were thinking about it that way. They've been at the forefront of the gambling stuff. Like, so I would like to think that they might have some really cool ideas of how to reformat their broadcasts. I'd like to see what they have to do over there. I mean, I really think like there's an opportunity here with this. I hope from the content perspective, they're just honest with the fans. But from the production aspect of it, you don't have to do it the tried and true way.
Of course.
Let's see what you got. No. I'd like to see what they come up with.
No, I'd agree with you on that. I do think there's a layer to this as well. Like, the Nationals are for sale. The Orioles will be for sale soon. And that could have ramifications, too, of how he's acquired 100% of this. Because, really, this is two networks. People kind of forget that. Like, there's nothing on NBC Sports Washington, whatever they call it, 2. It's just like an image of the station, but that's still a station that's open. And you and I have talked about this before, where there's no official clause that if the Nats get sold, the Masson deal gets resolved. There's no
we don't know what that is.
There's no promise of anything changing. And I could see Ted going, I've always wanted to buy the Orioles. We've always heard that through back channels that they've been interested. He might be going...
He told me that years ago.
He might be going,
He told me that personally. Years ago, he told me personally that he tried.
Yeah.
This was a long time ago.
Yeah.
He said that, and Peter Angelos at the time had no interest in selling at the time.
And look, I think Ted's a smart guy. And Ted's going, I don't really want the Nats, but I'll take the Orioles because it comes with the Nats TV rights. He might be setting himself up to have both baseball teams on his own networks.
And he has consistently talked about the regionality of the sports teams here.
He mentioned it in that press release today.
Yeah. I mean, I think
the super region or whatever he said.
If he got the Orioles, I think then he could start hyper promoting Wizards, Capitals, and all that stuff up with the Orioles. The Orioles are not motivated to do anything like that. Why would they help the Wizards and the Capitals?
That's right.
But if he owned the Orioles, suddenly I think it would become a more regionalized aspect. And I agree with you. I think it makes more sense for him to try to buy the Baltimore Orioles when they're for sale than really to buy the Washington Nationals, which might be one of the reasons why we just don't hear his name linked to them very much.
That's right.
He might be waiting for that.
And I think, look, you can call the Masson deal whatever you want to call it. He's just being a smarter business guy by going, I'll take the team with 2 teams' rights over the team that has none,
I agree.
And so I think this is just a layer of it, and I don't know if it's going to happen, but we'd be dumb not to look at that side of things, because if he gets them, he then owns Masson as well. Masson probably folds at that point, and he just gets glommed on with whatever NBC Sports Washington becomes. So that's what I kind of read that today, of he's setting himself up that if the Orioles come for sale soon, and we've heard things about the Angelos family and Peter Angelos himself, if we were to get them, I think we all know what's on the way at that point.
Yeah, the smartest thing I read today was that they're not just dumping the staff of NBC, that they're going to go through a season to transition. And I think that's wise, because if they had just bought this and said, okay, cap season starts in a couple months, let's just put together a broadcast with people who've never done it before,
right.
It could have been a disaster, and then they become a laughingstock. So I think that they're doing the right thing by that. The other thing that came up today, because I was out at Ashburn for practice, was, will Commanders content remain there?
Sure.
And I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
I firmly believe that if it makes money, I don't care what you think of them. If you're running a quote-unquote regional sports network, you'd be a fool to not continue to air it or find space for it.
Yeah.
If they don't feel like they're making a lot of money on it, and I don't know what the financials are between the team and formerly NBC Sports Washington, well, then they may shut them out. At that point, frankly, I would advise that the Commanders kind of start their own regionalized over the top. If they're not going to have an outlet, they have a large fan base that's engaged, they'd be better served. I would think that Monumental would be foolish to walk away from any and all programming dedicated to the NFL here, even if they don't have a stake in the NFL team. But I don't know what they're going to do. So that will be very interesting to watch. And that's another one where, if the day came that Ted bought the Orioles, would he then try to incorporate more Ravens material into something, into their regional network? Would that relationship seem more symbiotic to him? I don't know. So I don't think they'll stop producing JP's Pod. I don't think they'll stop producing Julie's show. I don't think they'll stop producing pregame shows. But I don't know. So it's going to be, we're clearly going to get through the season here. It's already here. They're not going to stop doing what they're doing. And I don't know. But I think my gut says if it's making money, they'll keep doing it. And so I think it'll stay, but I don't know. That could be a very interesting turn, which could be good and bad for the Commanders. It may force them to do things on their own without the accompaniment of that regional sports network, and that may free them up to do more things that they want to do to try to bring their fans into a separate over-the-top. And I don't know that outcome wouldn't be a good thing for them, actually.
I don't know, but I just know.
The people that are doing those shows are still going to do them. That's not going to stop either way. That's going to continue.
I would say I'm kind of with you. I don't think anyone hates making money or getting ratings.
That's the way I feel
about
about
it. That show has been on since I was a kid.
That's right.
I just think
there's a reason why it's still on.
Yes, that's right. And
so when everything else disappeared and that one stayed there, it ought to tell you.
They stayed on over the local sports show.
Correct.
2 local sports shows.
That's right.
And by the way, it brackets whatever Caps or Wizards game is on. It is always on before and after. So I don't think that's going anywhere, and I wouldn't think you'd want to throw something away that does rate, in a world where it is hard to get TV ratings.
My gut says it'll stay. I firmly believe they will still, if they work with the team, do a pregame show and a postgame show. I still believe they will bring in Julie's show however many days a week it is, because it does well there, and I just don't think that they're fools to throw away something that's making money. But I don't know.
Sure.
Until I've talked to people down there, I don't know what they're thinking about that, and they may want to close ranks and be more involved with the teams that they benefit most from, because they have no stake in that team. So I don't know.
Let's be real here, too. The formula actually works for them. They're not owned by the Commanders for their pre- and post-game show. And you have Brian Mitchell on that pre- and post-game show, and you and I both know B. Mitch well. he says whatever he wants to say regardless,
Right.
but he can really say what he wants when it's not owned by the team. He knows the score when it comes down to it, too.
Right.
Like, those are good shows. When the game is juicy, you turn on those shows if you're at home, right? So that's what I'll say, too, is I just would say don't be dumb and don't be naive to the fact that you've got a little bit of a gold mine on that on your hands.
Right. If you don't do it, the team will on its own.
That's right. That's right.
And then you're just going to lose that audience that day.
Yes.
That doesn't make any sense to me. So that's why I think it's going to stay, but I don't know what they're thinking or how they're thinking about it. So
here's the other thing that, just as me as somebody who has seen this happen, especially on the NHL side of things. You've seen teams like I think the Hurricanes. Hurricanes do it. I think the Sharks or the Kings do it, one of the West Coast teams. And there's one other team that does it as well, where they have simulcasted their games, where the TV and the radio call are the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
We're very lucky here that we have Joe Bianlocker on the TV side of things, and we have John Walton on the radio side of things.
Yep.
Could there be a decision there? I'm not going to speak for anybody, and I don't have any inside info, but I could see a scenario where they decide one of those becomes the main broadcast, the other one becomes the gambling broadcast, and by the way, that main one is going to be the main one, and it goes on the radio side and the TV side of things. I think that's a realistic.
I think it's possible. All this stuff is possible.
And so,
again, it'll go back to, are these things making money? If they are, they don't disappear.
Right.
That's all.
Right. No, agree.
Period.
But also, you and I know how that network has kind of been gutted over the past 5-6 years, where it's running with the skeleton crew. I could see them going, well, we're not going to
they have no original programming.
Well, and it's also
they have no original programming anymore.
It's also, we're not going to be able to run two broadcasts at the same time.
That's right.
And so I think I'm just throwing out a realistic scenario of what could happen and how that could change how you consume their games in some way, shape, or form.
I am very, very, very interested to see how they change the broadcast. I can't imagine it's going to look exactly the same. We're a season away from it, but I'm very interested to see how they think about it, because I'm just curious. I want to see how they think about it.
And I would say this one more thought that I tweeted out today. Maybe there's some hope that we get local sports programming back on the air. That we get the 30-minute
that's the other thing.
Central thing back. Well, like that we get Sportsnet.
Here's how I see it, and this is what I meant to say earlier when I was like, here's the thing that they have that's internal, that I do believe, though, you need to be very careful and don't sanitize the whole thing and just be real with your fans, within reason. Be real with your fans. You now have the opportunity to do a million different types of shows that end up on a digital network that can potentially grow out audiences, and you have the possibility of doing that. Yeah. It didn't benefit NBC Sports Washington because NBC's looking at it going, well, what's the point of having these shows if they don't make money? Well, for Monumental, what's the point of having those shows? It's just more engagement and bringing them back. So they don't need larger audiences. NBC Sports Washington had to prove larger audiences to keep a podcast going or to keep a digital show going. It made no sense to them to do it otherwise. It may have made sense to the team, but it made no sense to them. Having a bunch of shows that may or may not be making a large amount of money makes more sense for the team. Yep. So I actually do think that you will see a more vibrant, robust, growth of cap shows, Wizard shows, maybe a Mystic show here or there, maybe an esports show here or there, probably gambling shows for sure.
Of course.
Then that's when we'll see about the Nationals, the Commanders, the teams they don't have a stake in. Will they do this? And that will only come down to, all right, is that making money? Because that doesn't build the brand or get the outreach or find the small audiences that keeps everybody in the tent. And that's why those will have to go. But I know it gets all the clicks, and it's the NFL team.
Right.
So, and the same thing with, there's room here for, Maryland's had no presence on the, and, could they have a presence with something like this?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right.
There's a lot of opportunity here, I think is the point. There's a lot of opportunity. I know we're going to get a robust offering of Wizards and Capital stuff.
Right.
Beyond that, I don't know. But I do think there's opportunity and potential to do all of it. And I'm interested to hear what they do. I really am. They also have a live sports book. And I can't imagine why they wouldn't do a college football Saturday show from it, or why they wouldn't do an NFL Sunday show from it. Like, I think there's a lot of opportunity here to do stuff.
I would also say this, too. It's almost like a public service of the local personality scene has been stagnant because there's not a platform, right?
I'm here.
Yeah, right.
I'm here, baby.
But I'm
available, baby.
I'm just saying, besides, here on radio where we hear different voices because there's just a little bit more turnover and we exist, right? Between all three stations. The TV side of things has been barren for a long time when it comes to sports, right? Like, I think back
because of the corporations have devalued sports.
Yeah.
It sucks, but that's just the reality. It's all over the country. It's happened here too, and it's bane of my existence. I can't believe it happened to this market.
To this market, yeah.
Knowing how important sports are here, I can't believe it happened to this market, but it's happened everywhere.
And
it's
I think
terrible.
back to that NBC Sports Washington crew of that's how Julie got her name and herself out here. That's how Michael Jenkins got himself out there. That's how Chick Hernandez, who's not with them anymore, got himself out there. And they have younger hosts now like Jordan and Alexa Shaw, who does the Caps and the Wizards, and they have Wes Hall there as well. But there's just room here to grow and become a part of the community that has been taken away from us for 10 years now at this point. Is what I'm getting at here.
They have an opportunity. They do.
Right.
They have an opportunity if it's done in a way that allows their fans to go, all right, they're talking to me.
Right. Exactly.
Be part of the conversation. Don't ignore the conversation.
Right.
Don't pretend the conversation isn't happening. Just be real.
Yes, exactly. So,
but they have a lot of opportunity, and I assume they're probably fielding ideas right now for content. I bet.
I would hope so, and I would say this too. I don't want to take anything away from NBC Sports Washington. They had tried some of that before the pandemic started. They were going to try that late night show with Nick Ashew and Alexa, and I forget who the third host was, but that was ready to go, and I was like, oh, that could be interesting.
They're trying something,
and the pandemic hit, and all the cost cutting hit at the same time. So I will say, some of those ideas, maybe you revive it because I sure as hell would turn it on if it's on when I'm getting home from a game or whatever.
Yeah.
So.
All right, let me take a break. I can't believe I haven't mentioned this yet. The great Frank Herzog is going to join us at 4 o'clock off of the announcement that the Commanders are going to retire Sonny Jurgensen's number during the Dallas game late in the season this year. So the great Frank Herzog is going to join us to share his memories of working through the years with the Sonny Sam and Frank boots. I'm happy that that's happening. Stick around for that. Up next, though, KD is officially not coming here. Brainwash the Show, ESPN 630, Sports Capital. I was hoping Two Guns would pull off the deal of the century, but as it turns out, KD finally saw the helicopters and went back home. He got his bluff called bad.
I'm just going to say I was the one to throw out there that they could make a swap with the Jazz. And
get Mitchell.
Then all of a sudden
Mitchell's
there was a
in
meeting.
New York.
And there was a meeting.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I'm not saying.
So you're saying it's you?
It just, could be a possibility.
It was a good idea.
It makes too much sense. And so they were
go
like,
get Mitchell.
Crap.
Mitchell's in New York.
Right.
That satisfies we need to have a star here, and then let Utah flip KD for whatever price they deem is right.
That's right. So I'm just saying. Maybe someone heard it.
That's not bad.
Just saying.
Yeah, Ainge tells them, don't even bother packing your bags. You're not going to play here. We're going to trade you. Let's see. I loved this. So on June 17th, according to BetOnline, the Nets were 8-1 to win the championship next year, which was the fourth lowest odds on the board behind Boston, oddly, which was the top choice, Milwaukee, Golden State, then Brooklyn. A week later, they fell to 7-1. So that means some money was placed on them.
Got it.
Early.
Okay.
They went 7-1. On July 5th, 1 week later, when Kevin Durant put out a trade request, they jumped to 40-1 because no one thought he'd be on the team.
That's right. Yeah.
So between July 5th and July 26th, you could have got them at 40-1.
Oh man.
July 26th, when it's starting to become clear he might not be traded. 14-1. Now you don't know what's going on, and at this point he's gone to London and told Joe Tsai fire Steve Nash and Sean Marks, but they're not doing it. 14-1, and then today back to 7.5-1. So if you were a prospector and figured a bluff was occurring, you could have had them at 40-1 and probably prop swapped that at some point because you would have had him at a number that nobody has at going into the season. And then today there was a statement of we had a meeting and we're moving forward because Durant in the one, if he really, 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 really wanted to be traded, part of it, I think the one mistake he's made during this was when he openly came out and denied the Mark Stein story and said, I'm not retiring. Because I actually think that was the one lever that whether it's true or not, might have helped him just leaving it hanging out there that he might do that. Because when he came out vehemently, was like, I'm not retiring. Well, then the Nets are like, well, I guess you're playing here, aren't you?
Right. No, exactly. He played hardball.
Yeah.
They were also, honestly, if you're the Nets, it's easy to convince him to say, dude, Kyrie Irving's going to be here for one more year.
It's one more year. You're under contract for 4 more years. You're here for 1 more year.
We've got a championship caliber roster. Yeah. We've also got Ben Simmons. And if it works out with him, all of a sudden, you guys are cooking with gas here.
We
Run
got
it
one more
back
year.
this year.
Run it back. Like, Kyrie, hopefully, if there's no mandates, will play the whole year.
Right.
You know,
Right.
he's good. And then, like, if it doesn't work out, he's gone. You have 3 years left, and we have a giant hole in our cap, and we can go, what, we can't get somebody to play with you?
That's right. Right. Exactly.
Come on.
Yeah.
You know, we're in New York. It's you. Just chill out.
Here's the other thing here,
Chill out,
too.
man.
He started hearing about the whole, like, oh, yeah, like, Memphis wants you now. And, like, as good as Memphis has gotten, nobody wants to go to Memphis.
Well, they
Like,
also asked for a ridiculous return from all
Correct.
these teams. Like
Correct.
all the teams that called up where he probably didn't really want to go to but could win.
Yeah.
Minnesota,
Right.
you know, Memphis. They're like, great, send us your roster.
Yes, exactly.
And they're like, well, we're not doing that. And we're like, well, we're not trading you Kevin Durant.
And that always becomes a tough, chat with the athlete because they're going, what, you don't want us to trade you for the best thing on the market?
Yeah.
You know, like, becomes what, you want us to water down what you're worth? You know, that becomes a part of the conversation.
I think it was Chase Hughes who put out a piece like a few days ago where he was like, the Wizards are moving on with Kuzma, Porzingis, and Beal. And I went, oh, Two Guns told him that stuff's done.
Yeah,
and that's when I was like, well, we're not getting KD.
Right.
And we must not be getting Mitchell. Or maybe we made that call and Crazy Ainge was like,
Right.
I'll take every draft pick you have until 2035.
That's
Thanks.
Right. Yeah, right.
And they're like, no. And he's like, well, you're not getting him then.
And Rui, Denny, Kispert, Kuzma, everyone that's not nailed down, essentially.
Have a nice day.
Yeah, that's right.
We'll wait for your phone call back.
Tom's like, nah, I'm good.
So this is it. Dream's over, right? He's never coming here. I thought there was a glimmer when he finally pulled this, and I was sitting there going, oh my God, the places he wants to go to can't trade for him. We actually have a decent deal. Can we get him to come home? Like, will he play with Brad? Everybody loves Brad. Remember? Everybody loves Brad.
I thought with each passing day we didn't hear anything.
That'd be a hell of a start to the new Monumental Sports Network. KD showed up.
KD, sign here. We'll give you your own
Boom!
show. We'll give you your own show. Whatever you want to talk about.
KD's subtweets.
Yeah.
We'll let you make fun of whoever you want, whenever you want here.
See, I only thought the chances kept going up when we weren't going to hear anything. And as soon as we started hearing noise again in the last week of retiring, not retiring, I was like, it's not happening now. There's too much heavy water happening right now. Something's going to happen and it's going to get resolved. And it did. So.
Yeah. Okay, dream's over. Doesn't sound like we're getting Mitchell either. I still think he's being traded. I think they want to fleece somebody.
Yeah. I wonder, too, because the NBA gets trigger happy if they say, we'll wait till the deadline, and some team gets really squirrely and
maybe
move someone.
I mean, not unlike Durant, they have him under contract for a number of years. There's no rush to do it.
That's right.
What's the worst? He has to play there?
Right.
Ainge is like, that's not bad. Means we're competitive.
Yeah, right.
Means we're competitive. All right, let me take a break. I want to get into some of the college football stuff that's going on, including the contract extension for Nick Saban. And Frank Herzog, longtime voice of the Washington Redskins, is going to join us to discuss the team's announcement that they are going to retire the number 9 of Sonny Jurgensen later this year. Bram Weinstein Show, ESPN 630, Sports Capital.
The Bram Weinstein Show on the new ESPN 630.
One other betting thing that you had pointed out to me yesterday, apparently off of the Antonio Gibson stuff and the exposure of Brian Robinson feels like he's going to have a much larger role than it looked like at the beginning of camp. And because we had a very weird year in the draft where there's not a single quarterback that anyone looks at and goes, that's going to be the rookie of the year, because it doesn't look like any of them are playing.
Right.
Matt Corral's out for the year already.
Yep.
Kenny Pickett might win the Steelers job.
Sure.
He might not.
Yeah.
Right? Malik Willis is not going to be the starting Titans quarterback. Desmond Ridder is not going to start for the Falcons. I bet he's playing by midseason, but he's not going to start for them, which means he's not going to play for the whole season. So forget that. Brian Robinson suddenly is getting a lot of support for Offensive Rookie of the Year, because it does feel like if there was ever a year it's going to be an off-the-board guy to get it, might be him.
The odds look like this. This is from Max Meyer of Caesar Sportsbook. Over the past week, this was tweeted yesterday, Brian Robinson Jr. was 100-1 to win Rookie of the Year.
Yeah. Well, he's as of a week ago, he was a backup running back on a team with a lot of weapons.
That is now at 35-1. Mm-hmm. So it tells you how much people are piling on. And as I said to you yesterday, with this situation, there's no quarterback that's really in the running here. Therefore, it's going to be really open season on stats.
It's open season on stats.
And if he hawks a bunch of touchdowns because
possible.
He's a bruiser,
yes.
I could see it happening.
Well, and also, this will then matter also what their record is.
Yes.
If this is like a 10-win playoff team and he's got 12 touchdowns.
Yes, right. Exactly.
Then he's probably going to get it.
Yep.
I would think the dude for the Jets, the running back, or the receiver for that matter, but probably the running back, Breece Hall, that's possibility.
Yep.
Could Olave have a big year in New Orleans? Maybe.
All these wide receivers.
Does London have a big year in Atlanta? Maybe. But I do agree, this feels very off the board this year.
Yep.
And mainly because I think we know it will not be a quarterback.
Right.
The Offensive Rookie of the Year is not going to be a quarterback this year.
That's right.
So let's see how that one plays out.
Your top odds-wise right now, as of today, Kenny Pickett plus 700, Drake London plus 800, Olave plus 800, Breece Hall plus 900, Treylon Burks.
If I had to guess, I would actually think he's going to have big numbers because he's going to be a primary starter now that Wilson's a little bit hurt. And they actually have a pretty good offensive line up there now. Becton just got hurt, but they have a pretty good... That guy, the guard they picked last year, has turned out to be a stud. I think he's going to have pretty good numbers, that guy, Breece Hall.
After that's Treylon Burks also at 900, George Pickens 1,000.
Yeah, that guy,
1,000.
I like that dude.
Yeah.
that dude.
Pickens is what I would say too.
That dude's going to be a crowd favorite.
Yeah.
He jacks cornerbacks. It's really funny.
Sky Moore plus 1,000, Garrett Wilson plus 1,100, and then I'm going to jump ahead. Higher odds, actually, at least on this. Jahan Dotson's listed as plus 1,600. And then after that, Brian Robinson Jr. on this list, plus 2,500. He's actually behind Malik Willis at plus 2,800, which I like the value on that one, actually.
Malik Willis?
Yeah, just in case things go squirrely.
He'd have to be playing early for that to happen. Or he'd have to have just a gangbuster second half of the season.
I think if they get squirrely and Tannehill gets benched with
if they're like 3-4, they're like 3-4.
I'm saying like 1-3, 1-4, something like that.
And then they put him in, and then he goes off.
Right. I'm just saying
he's about the only one of the rookie quarterbacks that feels like that's a possibility that could happen.
Same thing, possibility of, hey, this guy runs a little bit, going to stuff the stats maybe a little bit.
They also have a really good defense.
Right.
That's not a great division.
Right.
They could probably win the division with him at quarterback or Tannehill at quarterback.
Right. So I'm just saying that's one value that I've always liked. But yeah, Brian Robinson just climbing up the list. Still not as better. Doesn't have better odds than Jahan Dotson though.
I think for him or Dotson for that matter, it will matter if they have a good record because every game they're playing is at 1:00, with the exception of a Thursday game and a Sunday night game, which means the schedule makers don't believe they're going to be haymakers this year, which means they're not going to get a tremendous amount of attention. They're a 1:00 kick every week, which means their record needs to be good.
Yep.
If their record is pretty good, then people will start paying attention. That's what will happen. But if their record gets good, people will pay attention. If they don't, he's going to have a really hard time unless somehow he has some Derrick Henry season, which I don't think is going to happen.
That's what I was going to say. Unless there's the very slim chance that they go gangbusters on the stat sheet and then fantasy people go crazy. Yeah. I don't see it happening. I'm saying
they have too many people. Even if he had a really good season, it's not like they're not going to give Gibson the ball or they're not going to give McKissick the ball or they don't have 5 receivers they want to throw the ball to. I don't think there's enough carries or targets for him to put up a season like that, even if they thought he could. Right. I don't think that's going to happen. So they need to be in the playoff hunt, and he needs to be scoring late touchdowns for people to then notice, and then all of a sudden people start talking about him that way.
Exactly.
Because as you know, the voters don't watch every game. So they don't know what they're talking about.
Absolutely.
They follow momentum like anybody else. All right. The other thing that I saw today was Nick Saban is now the highest paid college football coach again. They had to redo his deal after Kirby Smart got a deal that was for $11.2 million over 10 years per year. So now Saban has a deal that's $11.7 million per year through 2030. He's 70, so that means he'll be almost 80 when he'll be almost 80. So if you were wondering if this NIL stuff ticked him off to the point where he may want to walk like some of these other old salt coaches, apparently not.
Right.
Apparently not.
Right.
And
exactly.
There's a clause in his contract that states if coaching salaries change, they have to revisit so that he's never being underpaid.
Oh, God.
He also did say, and not that I'm surprised by this because he's 70 and they signed a contract until he's 77 or 78,
right.
that he said in his statement, he did said, this is our home and we look forward to finishing our career at Alabama.
Okay.
So not that that's a surprise, but it is him saying it.
Right.
I'm never going anywhere else, which, for everybody,
didn't expect him to. I mean,
no, but for someone who's 70, he looks pretty good for 70.
No, he looks great for 70.
Yeah, for someone who admits to eating Little Debbie cakes every day, he looks pretty good.
No, he looks great, and also, I would make the argument that coaching or being a head coach in college is more stressful than the NFL now with how
it's not close, actually.
You can't keep your players around anymore. No. So you're constantly checking up on everybody around. So.
Yeah, I mean, I do think, let's see. Do you have more job security in the NFL or in college?
I would say college, you have more leeway. People usually give you a couple years.
A couple years.
In the NFL, we've seen it more and more.
If you're at an SEC school that has a tradition of winning, you only have a couple. Like, Florida's going through a lot of coaches in recent years. Like Florida,
Florida State too.
Florida State stinks right now. Though. Florida's actually been good, just not good enough, and they're rolling through coaches right now. Like they're on their third or fourth coach now?
Yeah.
Because it was Napier's there now. Dan Mullen's a really good coach. Was just there.
Yep.
There was the dude before him, only lasted a year or two. Like they've been ripping through coaches here.
Right.
And that's since Urban Meyer when they were winning championships. That's a really good program that gets really good players, and they're ripping through coaches right now.
When did around here? When did Friedgen get fired?
Well, we're not comparing Maryland to Florida.
I'm not. No, I'm not. But they've gone through. They're on their fourth head coach since they hired Friedgen.
Yes. Well, again, you didn't know how good you had it when you had Ralph here.
Well,
it was such a mistake.
Same thing. The fan base here wasn't exactly frothing at the mouth to fire people. So I'm just saying.
No, there's 5 guys in the board of trustees that are like, I want to win more.
Right.
And they're like, well, I ain't paying for this,
Right.
And then what
I don't want
do?
our coach to be fat.
Yeah. I don't like our coach. He ain't attractive to me. I don't want to put pictures of him on the gram.
Stupid.
And you're like, oh my God. That's why you're firing him?
So dumb.
That's why you're firing him. Because he doesn't look good in a bikini.
Yeah.
That's why you're firing him. Okay. Sounds smart.
Football coaches.
Good idea.
They're all attractive human beings.
Yeah.
They're all Sean McVay.
Yeah. Listen, man, I'm not going to say it. All right. The great.
Although, to be fair, the Sean McVay coaching tree does look pretty good.
Right now it does.
McVay, LaFleur.
Well, that's Shanahan screaming, my coaching tree, mine. That's right. Stop saying McVay, mine. All of it worked for me.
Yeah, look, if you had a cup of coffee with McVay, you were getting an interview a couple years ago. So
still are. Yeah, Kevin O'Connell just got a job.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. When they go win the Super Bowl with John Walford, what do you think's going to happen next? It's going to be crazy town out there. Right. All right, the great Frank Herzog is going to join us next. Bram, watch the show, ESPN 630 at Sports Capital.